Ho ho! Feeling a bit Christmassy.
Have you noticed how people are making an effort, I think, this year to be extra festive? Everybody's going out of their way to kind of welcome Christmas.
You mean make up for the last couple of months? These COVID times?
Definitely looks like it, because I've seen that you've already bought your first box of mince pies way before December arrived, and you're looking at your bottles of drinks and your glasses.
Well, if you have mince pies, you have to have some brandy butter. And if you're having brandy butter, you might as well have some sherry and port.
So where's the brandy butter? I don't think I've seen it.
Well, I couldn't actually find any, so a little bit of a few tikkis, a few slices of butter with a shot of brandy, same thing. Baat to wahi hai.
Welcome to the Shabby And Man podcast. We are partners, parents, podcasters, broadcasters,
and everything else in between.
Now, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks since we did the last edition of this podcast. And we'd like to start with Spotify, only because we found out what our listening stats were.
You mean it's the only one that gives figures that we know how to access?
That's right. And for a moment there, I thought ours was one of the podcasts that goes on YouTube, or we were on television. We are not. So listening figures. And we'd just like to say a big, big thank you to all those around the world. Now, we are aware that many people hear us on multiple platforms, not merely on Spotify. But Spotify is the only one that kind of puts the figure together for you to have a look. And we are incredibly chuffed with the fact that there's so many of you listening to us and downloading us and hopefully enjoying what you hear. So a big warm thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It's always lovely to know that people are listening in on this conversation.
So you're talking about this audio medium.
Yes.
Which is podcasting.
Yeah.
There's a link. The reason I'm saying this is because a lot of stories came out this week about radio.
Yes.
And that's something close to our hearts.
Yeah. Are you talking about diversity or the lack of diversity on radio?
That's right. It's brought to my attention, especially by, I think they were, I forgot what they're called now. The South Asian, what was it?
Creatives. South Asian Audio Creatives.
The South Asian Audio Creatives.
And Radio Academy.
And the Radio Academy. And they also that especially in the United Kingdom, there's a severe lack of South Asians on mainstream media.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about mainstream media. I know that you do a 3-hour show every day on Asian media.
Yeah.
But we're talking about actual mainstream. Which has got me thinking, it's not like you can't play songs of Bryan Adams or Michael Bolton's Things You Love.
Which is exactly how we started our careers 25 years ago this week.
25 years ago. We were very lucky in a way to have worked for the largest
radio network in the world.
It's the largest radio network in the world, All India Radio. And also we worked for the largest commercial radio station there as well at the time, which is now called Radio Mirchi, which was then called Times FM.
Yeah.
And here you work for the largest commercial Asian radio station, which you can hear all over the United Kingdom.
Which is Sunrise.
So do you get the numbers of the listeners?
Yeah, I do. And looking back on this 25-year journey, I think at this point in the 25th year that we've both been associated with radio, in that context, talking about how we are still underrepresented when it comes to mainstream British media. And the statistics were truly shocking, right? Because some of the biggest names that you think of when it comes to radio, the Bauer Group, all these other people, there are so many stations that don't have any Asians at all. And then there are those that have the token 1 or 2 people over the last, 20 years or something like that.
Even the mainstream BBC stations as well.
Yeah. So it's something that people have been thinking about. To be honest, as a broadcaster, that has never bothered me in the sense that I feel that my core audience here are people who are exactly like me, British Asians, who enjoy listening to Bollywood music. They enjoy connecting with their roots via Bollywood and music, while at the same time they are very aware of what's going on in world
I know,
politics.
I totally agree with you. But we started our career, at least the first 10 years of our life, was playing English music, talking about generic things that people around the world talk about.
Yeah.
It wasn't specific that this is your color of skin, so you must like this. We talked about everything.
But you realize we were actually addressing a very niche audience back then in India, because when the second wave of FM stations came, they kind of took away all the Western music and they said that we have to address the masses, and therefore they went totally the Bollywood.
They did. They went very Bollywood.
Yeah. So in a way, if you think about it, it's ironic. I mean, we were addressing a Western music-loving niche in India when we were there, even though we were surrounded. It was our country. We were surrounded by Indians. And even here, as you like to say, this is as much your country as anybody else's, right? Because you're born and raised here. But even now, it appears that we're all in a niche. And the debate, I think, is around whether people who make up, remind me again, what is the percentage of British Asians in this country, in the British population?
I think it's 13 or 17% or something.
Something like that, right? So people who make up those numbers, should they not be seen more often on television? Should they not be heard more often on radio? And they shouldn't just be boxed into these specific stations which are only for them. That is the debate, right? Do you think anything's going to happen? Because this debate kind of comes to the fore every few years when there's someone kind of decides to point it out and then they go back to...
I know, but I hope things do happen because, as I once wrote an article, I think about 10, 15 years ago that, I love Pink Floyd, I love wearing Argyle socks, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I not be allowed to talk about them? Why should I have to talk about what Amitabh Bachchan is doing all the time?
Yeah. I think you have a point because what digital is to conventional cinema, podcasting is to radio, right? And I think the freedom that one gets on a podcast is essentially revolves around the fact that, it has absolutely no boundaries. So you can be talking about absolutely anything that you're passionate about, interested in. It doesn't have to be. We are Asians. We don't necessarily have to talk about Asian things. And as the clout and influence of podcasting grows around the world and people move away from mainstream radio, it might be easier for British Asians or people of any color, any nationality to make a mark anywhere in the world.
And you'll find your niche on a podcast. You search that dial, you type in what you want. I guarantee you, there will be some podcast by somebody on some specific subject that you will love.
Yeah.
You just have to find it. And there's plenty of space in the podcast atmosphere.
I think it is a turning point, though. It is a very important point in the way entertainment is now consumed and the way entertainment is rolled out. Because even when we've had discussions before about a completely unrelated topic, when you would say that because you went to school here, because you went to school in India, you would say that you don't even have to think about where you are or who you're speaking to. You are just as comfortable with your Indian friends talking about samosa, chai and chutney and dialogues from Sholay and Diwar as you are about friends who you grew up in London when you're talking about prog rock and this and that and, like you've told us a million times that, what's that guy who did the Crystal Maze that I queued up for the first time with my mum to get a book signed by him, right? Am I right?
It was a Rocky Horror Picture Show and he's not prog rock.
No, he's not prog rock.
No, he looks like a Richard O'Brien.
One of your teenage idols from this country. So, it is a little hard to wrap your head around the fact that you could be effortlessly blending into both cultures because you think of both cultures as yours, right? You're not alien to one or the other. So I think as more and more people travel the world, listen to others, get to accept and understand what other cultures are all about, as the world opens up, I think it'll be that much easier. But for now, there are still very few people of color.
I was just saying that if you were asked to go mainstream, would you have a problem with it? I know you like doing your Bollywood stuff, but you can quite happily...
You know what? Yeah, it's true.
Talk about other stuff?
Yeah. I love doing Bollywood and there are a lot of references that come from my life when I do my show in the sense that I grew up in India. So there were a lot of films that I, grew up with. So I don't have to Google the facts. I was growing up. I know what the facts were. And I think you're right. If I'm passionate about something, we were passionate about what we called Western music. The Bryan Adams and the Michael Learns to Rock and the Michael Bolton and all the rest of it. Even the Spice Girls.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, whatever.
By the way, I used to play the different kind of stuff.
Yeah, you were quite the rock star on All India Radio, right? Because you were known for the kind of rock music that you grew up listening to here in London, which very few people in India either knew about or understood because you didn't just play your Pink Floyd and your standard, Metallica and whatever, but you played a lot of stuff which nobody outside of London would probably be so passionate about. So we had
At least that's the lie I gave.
No, well, that worked. But I think you're right. If I found something that I'm passionate about, even in the mainstream, whether it is Stephen Fry or Benedict Cumberbatch or certain Hollywood films of the 60s, 70s.
You have a master's in political science. Why don't you do a political show?
The politics is something I think I left behind a long time ago. I just have a passing interest in politics now, as much as any citizen does, about what affects me directly. I'm not really into the nitty-gritties of policy and personalities.
I thought you'd say something like, that politician is so Machiavellian.
No. Machiavellian, yes, I can think of of many Machiavellian politicians, but it's not my cup of tea anymore. Only because I haven't pursued it passionately enough. There are other things that got in the way.
So, our final summing up for radio
Is that
hopefully a change will come.
Yeah.
Another thing I just want to say is that you can't blame the people in front of the mic, the talent, whatever, or the producers. It's the management, it's the decision makers.
Yeah.
Until they appreciate and see what's going on, things are probably going to stay the same.
Again, when the Black Lives Matter movement happened and other things happened in other episodes of this podcast when we've talked about it, I think it boils down to that as well. The world is also divided into two groups. There's one group that feels that to bring the underrepresented masses to the fore, you need laws, right? You need to look at these stats and really be shocked and say, how is it that there are no Asians on this station? Let's make it a law that, you have to have at least 2 people. And there's that other side.
But that's box ticking. And you don't want to be,
exactly.
I'm on this place because
I'm a woman of color, and because
you don't want that either.
Yeah, I had to fill a quota. But then some people think that is needed, at least now, unless you're given that kind of a push with the backing of the law, it's going to take forever for people to really integrate with other cultures and bring them to the mainstream.
Yeah, but what about, if I just play the devil's advocate, what about totally the other side, where this is a predominantly white country?
Yeah.
Right? And
where they are justified in thinking that, we would like to hear people or listen to people who look like us.
Exactly. It's only 13%.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it cuts both ways. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, It's the same as you are a British Asian and I still think of myself as an Asian in Britain. So there is a big difference. And but somewhere, of course, I think our worlds do converge, and it is about, especially when it comes to radio, this week we're talking about statistics in radio, it is about being passionate about whatever you do, right? And whatever I choose to talk about on radio, it doesn't, exactly as you're saying, it doesn't have to be Bollywood. It doesn't have to be Asian. If I'm passionate about Shakespeare, if I'm passionate about Benedict Cumberbatch, if I'm passionate about Sherlock Holmes.
I've seen you mention Benedict Cumberbatch twice.
Many times, because
in the last 5 minutes.
Sherlock Holmes is my passion in the sense that I grew up reading. I imbibed that passion from my dad. So, or even crime thrillers. There are so many things.
Come on, your dad must hate the new Sherlock Holmes version.
Yeah, he's not very taken by the new version.
Is he the Jeremy Brett?
Jeremy Brett and Basil Rathbone, as you say, even before that, right?
I am Basil Rathbone.
Yeah, so you're right.
I like watching 1920s black and white movies. 1930s, actually.
As much as it is about roots and culture, it is also about passion. Especially, I'm talking about radio here. If somebody offers me a show on a mainstream station about something that I'm genuinely interested in and I'd love to research and talk about and discuss, I'll happily do it.
But I don't know about you, but I treat this as a radio show.
Yeah.
We do it in one take. There's no edits.
Yeah.
If we make a mistake, we make a mistake.
That's true.
So
and we
sometimes
talk about non-Bollywood things.
Sometimes
as well.
There's a bit of silence because we don't know what we're going to say next.
Yeah,
like
and
now.
we talk about non-Bollywood. We've spoken about non-Bollywood things as well. Whatever's on our mind, really, whatever we're thinking about, and the upshot is that leaving this dreadful year behind, looking ahead at 2021, let's just hope that all these changes happen sooner rather than later. We do get to see people, as you're saying, not merely because somebody's ticking a box, but because you're looking at people of merit and you're not looking at what color they are or what their cultural background is.
So well done, the South Asian Audio Creatives and Radio Academy for bringing this to light.
Absolutely. Pointing it out and making sure that everybody saw this. Because sometimes we talk about this, but unless you see the figures, you see the stark reality, it doesn't hit you, right? Everybody knows that, Asians are not represented and we're not really in the mainstream. But to see that put in figures, in such stark graphs and charts, I think that really that's what kind of got everybody talking about it, even those who are not part of radio, that, how is that we are not represented in the mainstream?
Even if we did do mainstream radio, you could still put in a bit of Bollywood, some Sufi music, some Desi rock. Some of the rock music there is amazing.
Yeah.
And one thing that's just struck me is that you being an authority, a known authority on all things Bollywood, an expert of such, I'm sure there's a market to hear your views and your opinions on Bollywood as well in the mainstream media.
Yeah. And, I think radio, especially radio when it comes to the media, is an extremely personality-driven medium. And even if two people of different ethnicity, different skin color, different cultural conditioning spoke about the same subject, I'm sure they may not have the exact same views, right? That's what makes it so interesting.
See, that's a whole nother podcast, because I feel that radio should be personality driven.
Yeah.
But I think over the last few years, it's not personality driven.
There are a lot of people who...
It's more about the radio clock. Say this for a few seconds, say this, say this.
Conforming to a certain mold.
Play the
right?
jingle, play a song, play the jingle, play a song.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, but that's, you conform to a certain mold, but I still feel that the people that we gravitate to most, the people that we warm to are always the people who reveal a bit of themselves in their shows, right? It's not about talking about your life, but it's the way you introduce a song, it's the way you introduce a topic, it's the way you react to a certain conversation. That's what gives away who you truly are as a person, and therefore radio is extremely, extremely personality driven. I'd like to point one more thing out here. It just struck me while you said that, even if you did a mainstream show, I'm sure people would benefit from hearing what you have to say about Bollywood. It's a lot like, Channel 4 every summer does this film festival, right? Middle of the night, they pick out like 12 of the best films from that year.
Their Indian summer kind of
Their
thing.
Indian summer, which is curated by somebody who really knows her films, and, they're absolutely the credentials beyond reproach. But what we forget is that you're just giving a taster to the British audience. Let's not even go into 1 o'clock in the night and all of that. But, you give them a pick and mix of the best stuff. But you forget that there's so much more. There's so much more in terms of short films, art house films, commercial cinema. There's so much more that gets left behind. So I think the conversation also is about not just revealing little glimpses or little nuggets of your culture to the British public in fits and starts or in these little curated events, but allowing them to percolate into your mainstream and giving us a platform. How about throughout the year to talk about this?
To digress a little bit, the lady that curates it, I think she's been curating it since the 1980s.
That's right, yeah. And she's a very respected documentary filmmaker as well, Nasreen Munni Kabir, right?
So there's ample opportunity for other people to also step in now.
And for those who might think that, if you're talking about discussing Asian stuff all through the year at a specific place, then you do have specific channels for that. But that's not what I mean. It's not that 24 hours you're only talking about Asian stuff. Let's also make a little room while you're discussing women's issues, you're discussing Brexit, you're discussing cultural conundrums, you're discussing COVID, you're discussing all of these things. How about a little small window dedicated also to people who live in this country, who are subjected to the same laws, who pay taxes in their country, they were born here, they think of themselves as much as being British as they are Asian. How about catering to them as well on the mainstream platform?
Very true.
Now let's end on a slightly more hopeful and positive note. Since we last did a podcast, the COVID vaccine has come out.
By the way, for those who are hearing us for the first time, we do a podcast every 2 weeks.
Every fortnight, yeah. At least that's what we try.
That's what we've said in our head.
Yes.
Whether it works out or not is a totally different thing.
What do you think about the COVID vaccine then?
Good news.
Yeah.
It came out what's nearly been a week now since it's been out.
And
of course, Britain was not poo-pooing, but trumpeting the fact that we were the first ones to roll it out.
Which is what made everybody very suspicious. How is it that Britain has been able to roll out something which America hasn't done so yet, Europe hasn't done? And so there were lots of questions being posed on, how well this had been tested.
It did come out a day or two later that if you suffer from a severe allergy, don't take it right now.
Yes. And they've given us a clear structure on how it's going to be rolled out, or rather how it is being rolled out right now. You've got the elderly and the vulnerable first, and then the frontline workers and carers, and then you move down that chart. So over 60s, over 50s.
Which I agree with totally. I think it's correct.
Yeah, and I think it is something to be hopeful about, and I don't think anybody should be fearful of that. I think bearing in mind all the things that the government is asking us to be cautious about, as you said, allergies, I think it's a very good thing, and we should all get it. And let's hope that the world turns a corner with this, because they were saying that, don't forget, the fight against COVID, if you take away what's happening in different regions, if you look at it as a problem that the world is facing, it is about vaccinating the entire planet. It is the biggest operation that's ever been rolled out in the history of mankind. Right?
And it's not in one jab, it's two jabs, 21 days apart, I think.
Yeah.
The reason why we're positive and we're hopeful for 2021 is also that we have one of our kids is at home right now, because so many kids in his school have got it.
Yeah.
So and
In a social bubble.
Now in London, it's really spreading between the 11 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Many schools have closed. One child's school is closed, one's is not.
Yeah. And also, again, it's not something, we say it with a heavy heart that as a family, all of us as a family, an extended family, over the last 7, 8, 9 months, we've had bereavements. We've had close people who we've lost to COVID. We've had in our immediate family, we have people who are vulnerable, who are elderly. Our parents are of a certain age. So, it is something that all of us collectively feel that if this is what it takes for us to really put the worst behind us and at least look to the future with a bit of hope. If this is what the vaccine brings, we should all take it.
Definitely.
And on that note...
Should we say bye-bye?
I think it's time to say bye-bye. We've got one more podcast to get through before it's 2021, right? So that's going to be our year-end...
Maybe this time we'll do a bit of homework and we'll look at our favourite moments. Are there any favourite moments of 2020 is the point? We can't do favourite movies because we watch nothing apart from Netflix.
Yeah.
We can't do favourite books because we've
can
forgotten how to read.
No, but I'll tell you what we can do. We can do what we have learned from life in lockdown. All the things that have stood out to us as being the really important things in life.
That's very simple. Go to the supermarket at 5:30 in the morning.
No. We've also learned that family and friends are more important than things and, material possessions and things like that. And that people's health.
You're speaking for yourself there.
Well, okay. So that is going to be a very short podcast then, the next one. But let's do a little looking back on 2020 and looking ahead at 2021 and, our hopes and dreams for 2021.
So till next time.
Bye-bye then. Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you so much once again for tuning in, rating, reviewing, doing all the things that you're supposed to do or love to do or we beg you to do. So thank you.
And giving us some fantastic stats. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.